Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Upon Further Review and Irish Breakdown Podcast. I'm Vince D'Addario. That's Ryan Roberts. Brian is still en route from New York back to South Bend. So Ryan and I are going to take this ship and we're going to steer it home for everybody. But I'm still wearing my white sweatshirt, my white hoodie from yesterday because it was a good win. Was a win that I actually enjoyed watching. It was a replay that I actually enjoyed watching with my eyes. With my ears, that's another story. But with my eyes, I did enjoy that replay very, very much. I need to really learn how to watch with the mute button on, but I did not do that. I watched it again with the announcers. But it was a good review. I mean, I would say what I thought was good was still good, and what I thought was suspect was still suspect on this one. So going back and watching the film only kind of solidified my opinions of the game itself that we talked about during the post game, but we'll break it down and we'll talk offense. We'll talk defense. We may even talk a little special teams because why not? And Ryan, I hope you had a safe trip headed back from Syracuse back home to New Jersey, right? And I know you were watching or at least listening to the post game show while you were driving back.
Yeah, man. No, it was a weird one, Vince. I told Brian before we left the game that this was one of the first upon further review. I mean, post game shows where I was very upset that I wasn't on the post game show. You know, I was like, finally, Notre Dame has a great showing. You know, and then obviously there is some stuff that needs to be improved upon on both sides of the football. But I mean, you go on the road, beat the number 16 team in the country that's going to kick off a important 2-game stretch in a final season push for Notre Dame to kind of get, things turned around and on a positive track. I thought you guys did a great job, but can't lie, man. I was excited to get to this one tonight because I had so much to say last night, but driving back from Syracuse was a little bit of a, tough to get on a podcast in those circumstances.
It is, but it was funny because you kept texting us, retorts to things that we were talking about, which was hilarious. So that's why I knew you were in, man. Like you were into what we were talking about, which was awesome. So this is going to be your first opportunity to talk about this game and your reflections on the game. And obviously we're going to jump into the X's and O's as well. But why don't we start there, Ryan? This is your opportunity to kind of talk about the game as a whole. What you thought about it since you weren't on the post-game show. So let's get your thoughts. And you were there in person, which I know you obviously haven't been able to get to many games in person this year. And it's a different animal when you're watching this thing live from a press box view and you're seeing the all 22 and things like that live, as opposed to when you're watching it on TV, especially last night. Last night was a whole other, I shouldn't say last night, like yesterday afternoon was a whole different animal as far as what they were showing us on TV. It was poor, man. Like it was very, very poor. There was a lot of places where there should have been reviews and there weren't, as far as just replays, not reviews on the field, but like replays of what actually happened, telling us what penalties actually took place. Like I had no idea on a couple of them. So you were in person, you saw this thing. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, to keep it, just kind of overarching or from a macro perspective, right? I mean, I think that it's really cool to be in person because you see, I think the main takeaway that you get is, aside from just a different perspective, is you get kind of the interactions on the sideline and general pulse and kind of the vibe throughout the stadium. Like you get all those things, right? And I know that Sean and you all talked about this a little bit yesterday, but this was really, I don't want to say the first game that this happened, but this was a game where I thought Marcus Freeman took a huge step as a coach. Like I really did. I felt like he had a lot of moments. I know Sean cited some of the moments yesterday during the post-game show where I really feel like in a few other games, he would just kind of, let things slide a little bit, just kind of stay in his zone. And in this game, I really thought that he was reprimanding players, coaches, and was really putting his stamp on the program. And I know some people will say, that's, 7 games too late or whatever they would kind of want to term it with. But I mean, again, he's a 36-year-old head coach for the first time. And I think he's learning, and I think that he's ascending, and I think he's developing from a coaching perspective to being the CEO, right? Like it's a much different animal from calling a defense and setting a defensive game plan and practice schedules to being the guy that's overseeing everything and in charge of everything. And when bad things happen, your butt's on the line. When good things happen, you get all the praise. And that's a tough job, man. It's not an easy job, especially at the University of Notre Dame. So that was the first thing for me that was huge. And I mean, the second thing was I feel like against a good team that is Syracuse, right? There would be at points this year and just in years past where with all the penalties for Notre Dame, with all the bad calls that you thought kind of were just ridiculous, like that touchdown they called for Syracuse in the left corner of the end zone that the kids clearly stepped out of bounds before he had possession of the football. And there were just so many blunders like that from a refereeing perspective. And some games, I feel like that would have costed them a football game, right? Like they would have, that would have been the difference between winning and losing. But Notre Dame put themselves in a position where even though there was bad officiating, even though there was bad calls, they were still on the right side of all the momentum. And I think that was huge for them. And I mean, offensively, I think that Notre Dame bullied Syracuse all day, for being honest, right? I mean, running game perspective, offensive line perspective, running backs getting downhill. It was really nice to see. I mean, Syracuse had no rebuttal and no counter to what Notre Dame was doing from a physicality perspective, which was awesome. You know, there are things that obviously need to get improved upon. There no question. You know, I feel like in the second half, you saw play calling got a little more questionable. Quarterback play all day was very underwhelming. Defensively, I thought first half was fantastic, minus a couple bad plays. Second half, I think that they got a lot more conservative, which hurt them a ton at points. But at the end of the day, they made a couple big plays when they needed to make big plays to kill momentum as well. So a really nice showing on the road, Vince. A lot to improve upon, but a lot of good takeaways for this type of game. And Notre Dame came to play and battled a top 20 team in the country till the end and got a big victory.
Yeah, and that last part I think is important to note is that Notre Dame defeated a top 25 team, right? They've faced now 4 ranked top 25 teams, and they now have beaten 3 of the 4 of them. And the scary part is they've lost 3 other games, and 2 of them have been to non-ranked teams. And it's disappointing in a lot of ways. Obviously, it's like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of a situation with this team. I mean, I wish every team that they played was the 16th ranked team in the country, because apparently Notre Dame does pretty well against that. They're 2-0 against 16th ranked teams. And I don't think Clemson's going to fall that far, considering they were on a bye this past week. But, they're going to have another opportunity to make a statement on Saturday. The problem is it's at home, but we'll get to that part starting tomorrow. We're talking about the win today, so let's jump right into it. Let's go offense first, just because I don't know why not. The offense, I thought, and I kind of mentioned this in the post-game show, if I was going to take the position groups and, okay, did this group play well? Check. Did this group play well? Check. I felt like every group played well except quarterback. And I thought that the offensive line took another step. I really do. And I was mentioning this to you before we started, especially in the first half. I just thought the offensive line absolutely took it to Syracuse's front 7. And I'm sure that you guys brought this up during the week. When I see, as an offensive guy, when I see that a team is running a 3 front, with a nose tackle and, but 3 down linemen, essentially, you can walk anybody up you want. But if you're running a 3 front, I salivate when it comes to calling run plays. And when I've got an offensive line like Notre Dame has, bring it on, man. If you're not going to cover up my guards and you're going to let them roam free and get to the second level and all of these different things, like, yes, please. That is what I want. And Notre Dame took advantage of it. I mean, they absolutely took advantage of that opportunity that Syracuse gave them. And especially on top of that, and I know we kind of had a fun back and forth about their undersized nose tackle and him chirping and all that. And I defended him. But after watching the game, man, like, he made a couple plays here and there, but he got his butt dominated all day, pretty much all night long. And when you dominate the point of attack like that, it's over. Like, I mean, it's game over. And there were times when the offensive line was pushing the front of Syracuse 3 and 4 yards down the field. There was a 2nd and 4, I want to say, in the first half. They literally moved Syracuse past the first down marker And they ran the ball, obviously, and obviously had no problem getting the first down because they moved the entire front for a first down. I mean, that is how dominant Notre Dame was in this game. And you can say, hey, they're undersized, they weren't very good, all of that. From a statistical standpoint, Syracuse has a good defense. I mean, and Notre Dame dominated them.
They were letting up less than 3 yards a carry on the season heading into the game. Again, there's context, right? They played a lot of great rushing teams. No, Clemson obviously had a nice performance against them, but otherwise they have been really doing a great job, obviously, from a run-stopping perspective. But, I mean, Vince, this is the matchup that Notre Dame needed to win, though, and they did, right? Like, that's the big one. You've seen the offensive line consistently get better and better each week. I thought that Josh Lugg had one of the best games I've ever seen him play. Yeah. I thought that Zeke Corral had another really good game. And across all the offensive line, I thought the offensive line just as a unit played really aggressively and really physically, which when you think of Harry Heastand, that's what you think of, man. Just like a downhill, dirty approach to playing offensive line. And, I mean, from a defensive perspective, across the board, you're 5'11", 266 pounds, you're 6'4", 268, and then you're 6'5", 219 or 225, whatever he's listed at, Steve Linton. So they were a small defensive front. Notre Dame has a big offensive front, and that they've been playing better and better each game. And to their credit, they dominated a matchup that they needed to dominate, and they did it. They did it with an exclamation point, man. Like that was a no contest who won that particular matchup. Notre Dame's offensive line came to play yesterday at Syracuse.
And an extension to that from a blocking standpoint, I do want to bring that up because I thought that the tight end group, as well as the wide receivers, from a blocking standpoint, I thought they did a pretty darn good job as well. And I can tell you this from a coaching perspective and from a playing perspective, and granted that was back in the Stone Age, but blocking and blocking well is contagious. And when you are literally blocking these guys and just taking the life away from them, which is what happened most of the day yesterday, it's contagious and everybody wants to get involved. And there were times where, they were in 12 personnel, but they also brought the 2 wide receivers and attached them to the line. And those guys were blocking well attached. Now, I also want to say, because there's a bit of a Twitter fight out there between Sean Stiers and some other people, that just because you bring a wide receiver in and you attach him to the line of scrimmage does not make him a tight end. He's still a wide receiver. He just happens to be attached to the line of scrimmage. I just want to throw that out there.
Oh, because some people were calling Jane Thomas a tight end on the TV or something, right?
And they were defending that they were defending that call that he's a tight end. In no world is he a tight end. He is a wide receiver. And
he's 6'2", 215 pounds. Like, what are we doing? Right?
He's not a tight end. And there was and the play that I'm referring to when they were in 12 and they brought both wide receivers in, you had Lorenzo Styles on one side and Jaden Thomas on the other.
Yep.
They're both wide receivers. Just saying. But anyway, I thought that Tobias Merriweather blocked extremely well in space in this game. And if you're trying to earn the trust of the coaching staff, block your ass off. And I thought that the wide receivers did a pretty darn good job of that last night.
Yesterday. Yeah, no, they did. I mean, honestly, Vince, like, again, we're going to talk about the elephant in the room, which is the quarterback position at some point in this, right?
But yes,
by and large, love to hear your opinion on this. I mean, because I know you're talking just from a blocking perspective, but I thought the wide receivers just played well. Just
their best
general,
game of the year.
Man.
It's their best game of the year.
I mean,
I will say they were helped out by the fact that Syracuse wasn't really pressing a whole lot. They were playing back, it felt like. And Notre Dame does a good job when they're not being pressed.
That's true.
I don't know why Syracuse did that. That doesn't make any sense to me.
So me and Brian talked about that all week, Vince, because, I mean, on film, that's what they do, right? Like, they're an off man. They're really quick twitch. They come up type of defense in the back four. And I posed the question, like, is this the week where you change it up a little bit and you become more of a press man team than an off man team? And to your point, I didn't really see much press at all on the day. Like, they were just off man, chilling, doing what they do. And I guess it's like one of those things that you're going to keep doing what you do well, right? But I mean, it obviously did not work. But I mean, shout out to Deion Colsey, Vince, in a week He
Absolutely.
got all the confidence from Tommy Rees apparently to finally get a significant amount of playing time. But he played really well, man. I mean, what did he have? Did he have 3 targets and 3 receptions? One was obviously, they hit him on 2 comebacks. One was in a 3rd down in the later stages of the game. That was a huge catch. They hit him on the little over route off of the bootleg action. So, I mean, really nice job by Dion. And that's what they need, right? Like I thought Tobias was open for some opportunities. You saw Dion make an impact. You saw more of the 6'4" skyscrapers, which I think was a great sign for this wide receiver room.
Absolutely. I thought the personnel packages that Tommy Rees put out were very good. I did enjoy those. I thought the way that they're putting certain guys together. I think Merriweather, Colsey, and Jaden Thomas were on the field at the same time at one point. Like, yes, give me more of that, right? And I did enjoy that. I thought that, I will say this, I was not anticipating that was ever going to happen, if I'm being honest. I didn't think that was ever going to happen. Braden Lindsey obviously did not get a lot of offensive snaps. I don't know why that is. He played a lot of special teams. Maybe we'll figure that out during the press conference tomorrow and then moving forward on Thursday. But I don't believe he was injured.
I'll say this one thing about Braden. I'm interested to see what the backstory is to that whole decision not to play him at wide receiver. Like, I don't know if that was, self-inflicted. I don't know. Sure. I don't know what the issue was at all there, but I'll give Braden one credit in the fact that he played pretty well in special teams. He made a big spot and he didn't pout, like some guys would just pout and just kind of turn it off and shut it down. But Braden, for the role he was asked to play during Syracuse, played well. So,
absolutely.
I mean, we'll see what happens, but he was a valuable member of that special teams unit and a big reason. A part of the reason why they won, obviously.
No doubt. I agree with that completely. And sometimes you just have to own your role. And if that is his role, at least in this game, he owned it and he didn't pout and he went out there and he did his job. It's a nice tackle. It's a nice open field tackle on that return. So, I give him a lot of credit. And obviously we don't see the day to day, but I will say that Braden Lindsey's when he was playing wide receiver, he was getting open. Right. And so is he blocking? Is he doing a lot of little things? I couldn't tell you in practice what that looks like. Right. But from a route running standpoint, I thought he was doing a good job. Marcus Freeman did mention that they do have a tall package now in the press conference after the game. Awesome. That's great. Obviously, Braden Lindsey isn't that guy, but that's not what they were running the entire time. So I'm sure that there's a reason he didn't play. But the guys that did play, I thought that they played well. I thought that their routes were crisp. I thought that their blocking was really good. Hopefully this is a step in the right direction for the wide receivers. I will say that. It's not that I've been upset with them, but from an effort standpoint, up to this point, it hasn't been great, but I thought the effort was there as well. And blocking's effort, right?
Yes. Well, Vince, what I love about the chat here is that everyone started after the scan stuff, right? They started the hashtag ban the scan. I feel like there's some magic we could do here with the tall package becomes the all package, right? Like I want to see them more. Like I do, man. I do.
I know, right?
Look, we've talked a lot about Lorenzo Styles and maybe the mental block he's working through and whatever he's working with, right? But you didn't see him featured in this football game. You didn't see Braden Lindsey, but it was nice to see a couple of the younger guys, some of the taller and more athletic players, if we're being honest, right, get opportunities because Dion did his thing. I would argue that if Drew had thrown the football twice or earlier in the rep to Tobias Merriweather, he may have had 2 long catches and maybe 2 touchdowns, like very possible, right? So a lot of good to take out of there. And then, Jaden Thomas did an excellent job blocking. I know you talked about that already. He obviously had the touchdown catch during the football game as well to win through contact. And, again, we've always talked about him. Jaden Thomas up to this point, I feel like it's just been misused in this offense.
Agreed.
I feel like there is a role for Jaden Thomas. It's not a vertical yak guy. Like that's not him, right? But as a strong physical receiver that can be a little physical after the catch, but more than anything, find space, use his strong hands, like that type of guy. That's what Jaden Thomas can do. And I think that in his lone reception, you saw that. He can have an impact on the game even without a high volume. So I'll check it down the line and say wide receivers, big step forward for what the opportunities that was presented for themselves. We need now to get the other side of the coin a little better so that they have more opportunities. But I think that the wide receivers played a lot better than what they had over the last few weeks.
Absolutely agree with that. And we'll talk about this when we get to the quarterbacks. But let's move on to the running backs real quick. I absolutely love the fact that they started the Mr. Fumble, right? I think that was really, really important to Audric and his the mental side of the game, right? I think it was really, really important. And I mentioned this in the post-game show as well. In the last regime, he might not have seen the field again for the rest of the year. I mean, he may not have been. The doghouse for the last head coach was real, and it was extended. And if you don't believe me, go see Kyron Williams and his first year with the team, and he fumbles in the first game, and he never saw the field again for the rest of the year, right? So I was very happy to see that not only did he play extensively, but he started the game. And he rewarded the coaching staff by playing a heck of a game in this one. Now, we all know that when you are a running back, you are dependent on the guys in front of you, and they had a great game. And so I think all the running backs played well. I think they did a good job in blitz pickup, et cetera. But when they had the ball in their hands and they were running the ball, I was very, very impressed. I thought they did a really good job.
It made me so happy, Vince, because I know you guys talked about this on the show yesterday, but it was something that me and Brian had talked about. Actually, me and Sean talked about on Friday, and I know you guys, I think you and Sean had also talked about it on the Saturday show, the fact that, to your point, there is probably a large portion of recent Notre Dame history where Audric Estime is not a featured guy anymore, and he's just kind of thrown to the wayside. Yeah. And honestly, a lot of people, not only in this chat, but, just Notre Dame fans in general on Twitter were just kind of like, you can't play Audric anymore. You just can't play him. And I'm just like, I understand. Look, fumbling is unacceptable. Yep. 3 fumbles in 4 games is unacceptable. It is. Yep. There's no doubt. But at the end of the day, this is a kid that's playing his first real year of football at Notre Dame because he played very sparingly offensively last year. I know he played some special teams, but I think he carried the ball 7 times, and it all came in 1 football game last year, right? So, this is his first extensive playing time at Notre Dame. And kid's made mistakes. He has. But also, when he's played well, he has been their most effective back, in my opinion.
Yes,
he's been that guy. And I think it was huge for not only, just Tommy Rees, the offense, but Marcus Freeman all the way down to say, hey, we're not giving up on this kid. This kid is a vital part of our present, of our future, and he needs to know that we trust him, right? Yeah. And again, I would imagine just knowing the little that I do know about Audric Estime and everything that we've heard about him, he's a hardworking kid, right? So I'm sure he was in the lab this week working that ball security extra after practice, during practice, doing everything he needs to do to be a better football player. And he came out and he responded, man. And, again, I give a lot of credit to the coaching staff, Tommy Rees, for this instance, right? You came out in I think it was 22 personnel because they had Estime at fullback on the first couple plays of the game, and they gave him fullback dives. And I really loved it, man. The fact that he got the first 2 touches of the football game tells me they were trying to get that confidence back in him. And they were telling him, hey, you're still our guy. We're still here, right? And he ends up with 20 carries, 123 yards. Him and Logan Diggs each had 20 attempts this football game, and he was the most productive back again. So huge shout out to the coaching staff on that. Staying confident in him.
Yeah.
Sitting him last week at the end of the game because, hey, you can't do that.
Right.
And now you still know you're our guy, and Audric responded and had his best game in one of the biggest moments of the season so far.
Absolutely agree with that. And he rewarded the coaching staff, got 20 carries in that game. Logan Diggs had 20 carries in that game, and they both just ran really well. I mean, Logan Diggs, he had 20 carries for 85 yards, I want to say. So he's averaging over 4 yards a carry. Audric averaged over 6 yards a carry. I'd like to see Chris Tyree get the ball a little bit more, but there's only so many handoffs to go around. Obviously, he had 8 carries for 23 yards, but he only caught the ball 1 time. He was only targeted 1 time. I mean, if we're talking about a game plan situation, I still think that the running backs need to be more involved in the pass game, and they're not. I mean, they literally 1 target for a running back, 1 catch for 10 yards, right? And that is still an issue. And I think that there were opportunities in this game to get the ball down to the running backs, which is a good transition, if I do say so myself, to talk about that 3rd and 5 play where they ended up throwing the seam to Matt Salerno. We can talk about it.
Yep.
My issue isn't necessarily with Matt Salerno being in the game. Would I have put him in the game? No, I would not have put him in the game. My issue is that you're running 4 verticals on that play when you need 5 yards. And they actually showed it on TV. They went to the all 22, and you could see, and the point that McElroy was making, he's the color guy, was that you need to check down there. I agree with him 100%. That is what you need. So if you're going to run 4 verts, the idea of running 4 verts when it's 3rd and 5 is not to throw to one of the 4 verts. It's to throw underneath because they're in man-to-man, as Ryan
it's a clear out.
Explained.
Yeah.
It's a clear. You're clearing everybody out so that you can throw underneath and get those 5 yards. You're not running 4 verts on 3rd and 5 to throw down deep to the field. So that's a mental mistake by Drew Pine, in my opinion. And it worked to it was wide open if he threw it to the back. I mean, he had one guy to beat, and that guy was 15 yards off of him at the time he would have caught the ball. I like any running back that Notre Dame would have had in space against a corner or an outside linebacker or anybody else in space, and they guarantee would have gotten the first down, maybe a ton more. So that was definitely a mistake by Drew Pine. I will say that Tommy Rees called that to clear it out and throw it underneath, and that it just wasn't executed that way. So I will be positive, and I will say that Tommy Rees had the right call. At first, I was like, why are you running 4 verts on 3rd and 5? Like, I was like, what are you doing? But then it dawned on me he's clearing everything out for the other.
And if it was 4 verts designed to actually attack vertically, I would hope that wouldn't be the wide receiver group that he would want in there, right? Like, all due respect to the Matt Salernos of the world. But if you're running a true 4 vert look, I would hope that Tobias or Dion would be in there, and there would be a little bit of the tall lineup, whatever the heck you wanted to call them, right? Like, that would be more designated for that. But
I agree with that completely. And Matt Salerno could be a great decoy. You know, if you're just trying to run people off, if you're trying to do some different thing, get him in the game. You're guaranteed he's going to line up correctly. He's going to run the routes hard as hell. That's great. That can be a role for Matt Salerno. I'm totally fine with that. You're not throwing vertical hit to him down the seam on 3rd and 5.
No,
not a good decision. Okay.
Nope.
But so that's that play. That play annoyed me for many reasons. But then I realized, I came back and I was like, okay, put your coaching hat on. Why does this play get called? And it was just a non-execution situation. So let's talk about Drew Pine. Let's talk about, the quarterback play in general.
Yep.
He's still in that valley, right? We talked about the peaks. We talked about the valleys. And we talked about the fact that Drew Pine, will the real Drew Pine please stand up? He is like in the middle somewhere. Like, that is where I think we can get him to be, in the middle somewhere. He wasn't in the middle yesterday. He was still in the valley a little bit. I thought Brian made a good point during the post-game show. And as I was rewatching the game today, it is majorly a mechanical issue. He is rushing throws. There was even on the play, the 37-yarder to Michael Mayer. It was basically a go route, essentially more of a corner-ish go route type of deal. He was in the slot, ends up on the sideline, right?
Yep.
And Drew Pine steps up into he makes a nice move to get away from the rush, steps up in the pocket. But even when he threw the ball, he kind of stepped back as he threw the ball. And that is going to automatically make your throw short because you're not stepping through. And I think he was a little bit afraid he was going to run into the offensive lineman in front of him. But that's a mechanics issue, right?
Yep.
The pass that he one-hopped, he's rushing his throws. Like, he had the pockets that this offensive line have created for Drew Pine have been, he could set up a folding chair and just like chill out most of the time. And he does a good job. He's not escaping. He's not doing the Ian Book that just made me stay up late at night at times in bed where he would just bail out of a clean pocket. He's not doing that which is great,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
he's not getting his feet where they need to be. He's not stepping into a lot of his throws, and that's why they're either skipping in or
Yeah.
they're floating high. And so they've got to go back to the lab and just clean up some of those mechanic issues. And I think Drew Pine will be just fine. I really do.
Yeah. I don't think he's a very anticipatory thrower right now, Vince. Like I feel like everything's late, at this point. And to your point, when you're late, you have to rush mechanics. Like that's what kind of stuff happens. Like you talk about the Mayer play. I think about it was third down in the first half when it was just like an inside breaking route to Jaden Thomas, and he threw the ball into the ground, and Jaden almost made a terrific catch coming back for the football and scooping it, but it's just like, Drew, you had a clean pocket, and that's an easy throw. Like it was not a tight window. It was an inside breaking route. Like there's really no excuse for that one. And I mean, it was like a 7-yard route. It wasn't like he threw the ball, it's not like a 15, 20-yard in breaking route. Like it's a 7-yard. I'm pretty sure it was just an in route, if I remember correctly, or a slant. It was something that was just in breaking. And
it was open. I mean, it was not,
wide open.
It was not a situation where you're trying to squeeze it in or anything. Right. Just play catch. Just play catch.
Yeah, man.
I had a nickel for every time I said that from the dugout. Just play catch, man. Come on.
I just think that there needs to be a level of comfort that needs to be hit here. Because again, I just don't think the anticipation is great. I do think that when Drew is on time and in rhythm, I think he's a pretty accurate kid. I do.
I agree.
I think when he rushes his process, that mixes everything up. I mean, the last 3 games, and I think Brian was the one that made this note, he's had a 50% completion percentage or worse in each of the last 3 games. And that's not true, man. It's not. Like, there's going to be some times where Drew is going to struggle. Like, sometimes his yard per completion isn't going to be great. Sometimes his yard per attempt is going to be great because he's not a cannon for an arm, right? Like, he's not going to push the ball down the field, but he's also not an inaccurate kid, right? Like, this isn't Brandon Wimbush. It's not. It's really not. And right now, I think that everything is just, he's a tick late and he's rushing his whole process. And I think that's affecting his mechanics. I think it's affecting his accuracy. And I think it's affecting his confidence because I have been fully on in this boat, Vince, right? There is absolutely a talent issue at the quarterback position in Notre Dame. It needs to get better.
Sure.
We'll never shy away from that. But Drew Pine is not playing up to his level that he can play. He's not. Is he ever going to be the guy? I don't think so. But I do think that he's a much better player than what he has shown the last 3 games. This is something where, you coming off of a big win, coming back into this week of practice now leading up to Clemson, extra work after practice, getting more comfortable during practice, throwing to his receivers. You just need to become a little bit more anticipatory, man. If he is able to do that, I think he will play to a good enough level where you can beat just about anybody left on the schedule. But if you're not going to play better football than what you've played the last 3 games, that's going to hinder you, and that might prevent you from winning a couple football games that you might have a chance to win. Like, that's the point blank to it. Drew needs to play better. Drew can play better.
Right.
He did not play well in this football game. He played poorly in this football game. Underthrown balls. He floated a couple, had an interception on a ball they just should not have tried to make. Down the seam to Michael Mayer. Like, there was just a lot of bad out of Drew. At the end of the day, they got the victory. He was a part of the victory, all that good stuff. But there's no doubt that Drew Pine needs to play better football. Like, I don't think anybody would argue against that.
Well, and I'll also say that going into arguably the biggest game of the season, you could say Ohio State was, but the biggest home game of the season. Let's go that route. That's not close. I think the rest of the team has upped their game to this point. Like, if we were just looking at this game moving into the next game, I think offensively and defensively, I think all levels are playing to a degree where they can compete with Clemson. I'm not saying they're going to beat Clemson. I'm saying they can compete with Clemson. I don't think that there is a position group that we're talking about that is going to bring them back and not allow them to win if everybody's playing the way that they can play, except quarterback at the moment. If he raises his game and he just plays how he did against BYU, it will allow everyone else to play at a higher level, and then they are going to be able to compete against Clemson. That is how I feel after rewatching that game. He needs to just get up to where everybody else is. Just get up to where they are, and you can compete now. No question. Yeah. No question. And I also will say this. I don't think you need to simplify the playbook right now.
No.
These are throws Drew Pine can make.
Yeah, they're not asking it like it's not like every plays a vertical stretch and he has to push the ball down the field. Like Tommy's not calling things that are out of his comfort zone. To your point, right? Like it's not like he's doing things that are overly difficult for his talent level. Like he can get it done.
Absolutely, and yes, in the first couple of games there were short passes and things that allowed him to get into a rhythm and all of that. And I want all of that, but I think all of that is actually there. He just wasn't executing those plays. It just wasn't. Some of the plays that he missed, short hopped or overthrew, those are balls that he can throw. We've seen him do it. It's just he needs to execute those throws. And if he does, this team's going to be dangerous. This team is going to be dangerous. So overall, offensively, like I said, I think they check the boxes of all the position groups except for quarterback. Quarterback needs to be better. I thought that there were aspects of the game plan or of the play calling that I wasn't a huge fan of, and we kind of talked about some of it. But at the same time, they weren't out of the realm of what Drew Pine and the offense can do. And if that's the case, then so be it. Like I'm fine with that. And you can't just run the ball, 20 times every drive. I get that. You do have to do some play action. You got to throw the ball. You've got to, even though I'm yelling at the TV to run the ball. Absolutely. But I'm excited about where this offense can go because I do still have faith that Drew Pine can, like I said, find that median. If he finds that median, this team is going to be just fine offensively.
And this is one thing too, Vince. I was in the press box. Just I can't root for the team in the press box, but like in my mind, I'm just like, run the football. Like this is the game where you could just bully them and take advantage. Like this is the game. But to your point, you can't be that one-dimensional offense against Clemson. You can't do that, right? Because you're not going to be able to run the football at that high of a level against a Clemson team. Can you still run the ball effectively enough? I believe you can, and we'll talk about that more this week. But you're not going to bully ball them like you did like you could do against Syracuse. There's got to be there has to be a more balanced attack, because if you are one-dimensional against a defense and a front seven that Clemson has, it's going to be a long day. So you need to find some streak of consistency, some streak of well-roundedness. And I think that you coined it perfectly yesterday with the fact that you don't need Drew Pine to be North Carolina Drew Pine because every single game, because that's unrealistic. It's unrealistic. Absolutely. But you also need him to be better than what he's been the last 3 games, right? Like there needs to be something in the middle that is consistent for Drew Pine. He's not there at the moment. Can he get there? Let's hope. And they're going to need him to get there is the important part of this conversation.
Right. Yep. And there's a lot of questions in the chat about, is it time to go to Steve Angeli and all of these different things? The answer is no. It is not time to go to Steve Angeli, and there's a couple of reasons why. Number one, he's a true freshman. The one thing that Drew Pine has over Steve Angeli is that he knows the entire playbook, okay? If you bring in Steve Angeli, your playbook goes like this. And that playbook is not going to beat USC, and it's not going to beat Clemson. It's just not. So you do need somebody that has a handle on what you want to do offensively, and I'm not ready. Drew hasn't played bad enough that you're like, got to go to the backup like that, who was originally the 3rd-string quarterback. Like it's not where I'm at right now, and it would have to be a massive problem if Drew Pine is not hurt for me to go to Steve Angeli if I'm on this coaching staff. What say you, Ryan?
This is where I am. You've now had 3 straight games of bad quarterback play. Let's just call it, right?
Absolutely.
It's been bad for 3 straight weeks. If it continues, Vince, I have to at least think about it, right? Someone just put in the chat, and it's a great note to put on, right? You are now in the points with Steve Angeli being your backup quarterback where it is a 60-40 split in practice, right? Like he's getting opportunities in practice to start to work in. We've seen him in a game a couple times now, but he's obviously just been relegated to hand the football off. At this point, if Drew doesn't improve and improve quickly, I'm going to give it a serious thought. I am, because was there anything in that football game that if we're going to become a run-heavy team to the degree that we saw against a Syracuse, Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're right. And it's obviously not going to play out like that against Clemson. But
Right.
if you are that team down the stretch where you're just that heavily reliant on the run game, then why not play Steve Angeli, right? I mean, did Drew Pine do anything against Syracuse that Steve Angeli couldn't have done? I mean, that's just the point blank period to it, right? Like that's my thing. It's not like he's playing to a point that is going to not allow me to at least give Steve Angeli a serious thought. So if it doesn't happen, if he doesn't start to show improvement, then I'm going to give it serious thought. I am. I'm not saying that he's on a short leash. I'm not saying that I'll pull him after a couple of bad series. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that I am constantly evaluating this position every day in practice during the game.
Fair.
That's where I am with it right now. That's where
that part is fair. Constantly evaluating the position, I am totally fine with. I need to see in practice that Steve Angeli and Drew Pine are like right here. You know what I mean? They need to be neck and neck for me in a game to be like, let's go to 18. You know what I mean? I don't know what it looks like in practice. Is Drew here and Steve is here? Is it the other way around? I don't know. If Drew gets hurt, then Drew gets hurt and you got to go to Steve. I mean, that just is what it is. That's like every other quarterback room in the nation, right? And you can't give them 50-50 split reps on the off chance that Drew gets hurt. I mean, you can't. That's not how it works, right? You just can't do that.
Right.
If he struggles against Clemson, then what the next game is what? Navy? Does that sound right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
You or I could suit up against Navy and probably win. So if you're trying to give Steve Angeli confidence and you want that to be like his first start, I would consider it. I would. Now, you're going to get a lot of people really excited if he goes out there and shreds Navy's defense, which, again, is not exactly, amazing. But at the same time, if he goes out and does that, then you've got a clear-cut, quarterback controversy and everything else. So do you want to avoid that? Do you want that? There's just so much that goes into this decision. But
yeah, it is. And honestly, is this the week that you do it? I mean, Vince, I don't think it's fair to Steve Angeli in his first serious action to have to face off against Clemson, right? Like, that's not fair. But just to my point, man, is that I think Drew needs to understand that, like, you have to play better than this, man. Like, you just have to. I mean, this might be a situation where, and I'm not predicting this, I'm not hoping for this, because I hope that Drew just turns it around and he plays fantastic next game. Like, I hope he finishes it out and he's, the Drew Pine that we know he can be during the course of the season. But if he plays terribly against Clemson and you have Navy the next week, maybe that's the Angeli opportunity, right? Like, maybe it is. I don't know. All I know is that Drew Pine needs to play better. He can play better, and they'll need him against Clemson. They'll absolutely need him.
Yeah, absolutely. And D-Rock, if I was to play, I could do this all day long.
Triple option, baby.
That's it right there, baby.
You just hit the dive back every single time. You would never
absolutely. That's a handoff every single time. I can put it in Seven's kitchen. I can put it in Diggs's kitchen. I can do that all day long. But anyway,
Vince, I know Brian's obviously not on this show, so he can't yell at me, right? But I mean, after seeing Audric Estime line up at fullback, can't you see a little triple option of the future, man? Can't you see it? Can't you see it?
You kidding me? You put Estime at fullback, okay? You put Chris Tyree at tailback, and you run triple out of I formation. It's over, man. It's over. I would not want Drew running my quarterback, though. I would want somebody a little more athletic at quarterback, but at the same time,
like Brandon Wimbush or a Tyler Buckner or someone like that. Yeah, right.
I'm just saying that would Tyler Buckner. If Buckner was still here, dude, I'd be upset if I'm not still here, but still able to play. I would be upset if Tommy Reese didn't line up in I formation and run triple at least once. That would be awesome. That would be awesome.
Fantastic.
Anyway, we digress. Let's see here. Okay, let's go to the defense, Ryan. You kind of focused on the defense. Let's kind of go front to back, kind of how we always do it. Let's start with the defensive line. Your thoughts on the way the D-line played. Let's kind of split it up. Let's go inside, outside.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, when we're starting from the front back, so let's hyper focus on each of these positions. And I think, just kind of quantifying what everything means in this football game, because we mentioned it, right? Like, there was a lot of good moments in the first half. Second half was Didn't love the game plan coming out of the break, but you had a couple advantageous, opportunities, obviously, with the interception off the tip pass from Howard Cross, another interception that probably should have stand by Brandon Joseph, because I still haven't seen that phantom offsides call, but we'll talk about that at some point here. But defensive line wise, I mean, Vince, interior defensive line, I thought it may have been the best game they've played all season. They've been playing pretty well. Yes. I keep talking about this on almost every show we talk about defensive line. I think Howard Cross is still maybe the most underappreciated player on this football team. I mean, he's just been good all season, man. Is he a star? No. Is he a guy that just destroys the box score with his impact? No, but what he does is so valuable, man. He does all the dirty work. He's got some reps where you're just like, that is some nice quickness, ability to affect the passer. And then he has the big tip pass in this game. And we know that he's, still a couple weeks now coming off an injury and still getting back, fully into the swing of things. And I don't even think he started this football game. I actually think Chris Smith was the first nose guard on the field.
He was, because I remember he was trailing Joseph going in for the touchdown on that pick six.
Yeah, and I'll get to Chris Smith in a second, but I just really want to tip my hat to Howard Cross, because I think he's played inspired and underrated football so far for Notre Dame. And like I mentioned, Chris Smith started the football game, and I thought he played really well. I'll be very honest. When they got Chris Smith, the transfer from Harvard before the season, I expected him to be a 5 to 10 snap a game guy and just give you some depth. Vince, he's a better football player than I thought he was. He is, man. He plays very powerfully at the point of attack. He's got strong hands, and he's the beef that you have right now, because you obviously with Aiden Keanaaina getting hurt before the season and just the undersized defensive line that you have otherwise, that's the beef. He's your 300-plus pounder, and he's played a good football game. I'm pretty sure he had the first tackle of the game where it was just an inside zone, and he stoned the guard at the point of attack, was able to stack, shed, get off the block, and he made a really nice play. He had a nice game. Gabriel Rubio, I thought, played his best football game at Notre Dame so far, man. I thought he was disruptive, and I thought the snaps that he got, he was just consistently good across the board. There's been some highs and some lows with him so far. I thought it was a lot more like we were kind of talking about where Drew Pye needs to get. I thought he was consistent. He still made his impact, had a tackle for loss in this game, but played a good game. And in a game where Jason Adamalola was, just kind of quiet for the most part, it was the other guys, right? Like the Gabriel Rubios of the world, the Chris Smiths, the Howard Crosses.
Yeah.
Those are the guys that made the impact in this football game. And I thought they did a really good job. Edge-wise, defensive end-wise, I thought it was a little more up and down. I did. I thought that there were moments of really good stuff from Justin Adamalola. I thought, he had one play where he had to drop in the coverage, and he was stride for stride with Sean Tucker running a little, just a little flat route. And then Isaiah Foskey got in the same situation, back-to-back reps where he had to run with Sean Tucker, great actor, Sean Tucker on a couple wheel routes. And you're just watching it, so you're just like, that is a 6'5", 260-plus pound defensive end running stride for stride with one of the best running backs in all of college football. Like, that's some freaky stuff, man. Like, absolute freak show stuff. So there were some good moments. I thought Isaiah Foskey set a good edge for the most part during the day. I thought Nana Osafo-Mensah did a solid job. I thought Riley Mills, when he was at defensive end, because he kind of cross-trained in between, and he played a really good football game all around, in my opinion. I thought he did a good job setting the edge. But I just thought it was way too up and down. The only real success that Syracuse had on the ground, and even as, just extending of the passing game, was when the defensive ends lost contain at times, right?
Yes.
And
that happened.
I think
yeah. Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine, because I think that it was the first drive of the game where Sean Tucker is running a inside zone, and he just cuts back and bends it all the way back outside, out the back door. And it was just, Justin Adamalola just didn't set a firm enough edge, and Brandon Joseph didn't come up and run the alley appropriately enough. So it's self-inflicted stuff like that, where it's just like you just have to maintain your gap integrity in your proper position. So I thought edge was just a little bit up and down, but I mean the big talking point and a position that I just think we need to start talking about more, because they've exceeded my expectations for the year, is an interior defensive line, man. Even after Jacob Lacey leads the team, and after playing a pivotal role early on in the year, the interior defensive linemen, the Chris Smiths, the Gabriel Rubios, the Howard Crosses, those guys are playing really good football on top of also having Jason Malola back healthy now. I just think that the interior defensive line was one of the underappreciated storylines of this game, and I thought they played fantastic. There was not a lot of success running up the middle against Notre Dame. It was all stuff that just had to bounce. Yeah. So hats off to the interior defensive line. I thought they played an awesome football game.
Yeah, I agree with you on the up and down of the edge players, right? There were times where they just kind of snuck inside a little bit too much. They didn't set that edge the way that they needed to, and they allowed some of those runs to bounce outside. And you just can't do that to a running back that is as good as Tucker is, because he can bounce that out, and he's got the speed to, if you are not playing that correctly, he's going to outrun you to the sideline. And we saw that happen a couple of different times, right? Because not only did he outrun the edge guys that did not set the edge very well, but then you had some linebackers coming down and trying to almost artificially set the edge, and he was able to outrun those guys to the sideline, right? And if that edge is set properly, then that linebacker coming down is taking a good angle. If it's not set properly, then that angle is now wrong, and he's able to get around it, if that makes sense. So it's not the linebacker's fault. They're doing what they're supposed to do, but that edge isn't set properly. So now the angle is forced to be wrong. And so, again, we saw some really good things. I thought there were a couple times where Isaiah Foskey set the edge really, really well. There were times where he attacked the backfield when he saw his side of the line pull and go left, right? And when he was on the left-hand side, they pulled and went to the offense's left. He just put on the afterburners and just caught the running back from behind. Like, that takes some speed and athleticism, no doubt about it. So good things and then some iffy things. So I agree with you on the up and down nature. Now, is Howard Cross, like, does he get the Kurt Heinisch award for you? Is like that? Is that kind of like the lunch pail? Let's use all the cliches that we have for like an undersized nose guard.
He's a lot different than Kurt, right? Like Kurt was just this like stupidly strong, kind of undersized nose tackle. I think Howard's more talented than Kurt is. He's obviously not. He doesn't have the frame to be as big as Kurt was at his peak at like 290 plus pounds. But Howard's got a little bit more, shiftiness to him. He's got a little more quickness. Like I just think that we don't give him enough credit because he's just kind of this 6 foot, 270 pound undersized nose tackle. But I just think he's a good football player, Vince. And I was reminded in the chat and completely forgot to mention him. Jordan Botelho with 2 sacks, man. Kind of a guy that's been struggling to get playing time outside of special teams work over the last couple weeks. Another guy that, even though the previous week didn't play a ton of defense, I thought he made an impact, obviously, on the special teams side of the game. But this game led the team in sacks with 2 sacks. One was kind of in, garbage time, mop-up kind of duty or whatever. But it was nice to see him on the field. And if they can get, a little more consistency out of him, if he's a guy that they can depend on, then you're talking about third downs being really interesting, right? Having him with Isaiah Foskey, with Justin Adamalola, with Jason Adamalola, having different looks with the linebackers. I thought that Maris did a good job blitzing this past game, which was nice to see. Having that combination, Jordan could be a kind of a weapon, right? Like a designated pass rusher. But it's just been about the consistency with him. But again, he showed up in this football game and he looked good, man. Looked good.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And a beautiful transition by you on, talking about some of those linebackers. And I thought that the linebacking core played very, very well, especially in comparison to the way things have gone so far this season. It felt like they simplified things for the linebackers. Yeah. It didn't look like they had the paralysis by analysis that they had going, especially in the first half. I thought the first half game plan from a linebacker standpoint was spot on. It was on point. They absolutely were not only confusing Schrader at quarterback, but they were containing him, and he was a non-factor for this offense while he was still in the game. I was very impressed with the way the linebackers played.
Because I remember last week when we did the show, Vince, I was, on Pop Pro the Review, I was way too harsh on the linebackers, on the post-game show last week. I thought they actually played a pretty good football game, man. Like, there was a lot of good in what they did against UNLV. But I said on the show, like, now we need to see it against a better level of competition, right? Like, they need to play a better brand of football against a better team. They did that this week. This was the best game the linebackers have played all year, in my opinion. I mean, J.D. Bertrand, this is the J.D. that we were hoping was going to be the J.D. coming into the season, right? Like, he was consistent, run fit, tackled all day. I didn't see him miss a tackle all game. Sniffed out that one screen pass that was in a big moment of the football game. There was a lot of good out of JD, like the consistency.
Absolutely.
You're not going to get the splash plays all the time with him, but what you got in this football game was consistency, and it was so nice to see. And I thought for the second straight game, Maris Loifau was playing a lot faster than what he had. The previous X amount of games at the beginning of the season. They triggered him a lot, got him downhill, let him be kind of the explosive player that he can be. And I mean, you saw him on that one pass that ended up getting complete early in the football game. It was kind of overthrown, throw into Sean Tucker. He came up and he smacked Tucker in the pass game, man. I'm like, that's the Marist.
Yeah.
That's the Marist that I fell in love with in 2020, man. I'm like, that's the guy that I've been waiting for a couple years. And so I'm happy the staff has not given up on him, because I think now that they're using him a little better, kind of more of a free range rover type that's going to be able to get downhill and use the explosiveness. Thought he played a good football game. It wasn't, again, box score wasn't stuffed by either guys, but when you saw the film and you just kind of look back, they were in the right spot. They were aggressive and they were helping to play good team defense. That's what you need from this linebacker unit. If the linebackers play this well for the rest of the year, you feel a lot better about Notre Dame's chance, because that has been easily the weak link of this defense this year. By far, far and away, linebackers have been a bad unit for the majority of the year. This year, this game, I should say, they played good brand of football, man. So hats off to JD, hats off to Marist. I thought, it could have been easy for those guys to go in the tank after having a couple tough football games, in a row there. But they played good football this past week. I thought it was a little up and down for Prince Collie from what I saw. I think that Prince is an incredibly explosive and talented kid. It's just he's still seeing the game at a kid that you would expect for a guy that hasn't played a ton of football. Like, he's still learning and processing the game at that type of level. But I thought that he still had some nice moments. Jack Kaiser, I thought, played a good football game overall. Nothing that popped out, but he just was in the right spot. And you talked about that 2nd and 1 end around where he tracked the guy down for a 6-yard loss. Like, beautiful play, man. Beautiful recognition of that play.
Right. It was and way to take advantage of a poor play call in that spot, but you made them. You actually made them pay for it, which is what Notre Dame needs to do.
With the eye candy, especially when you have a Sean Tucker, Vince. Like, if I'm that weak side linebacker and I see that flow, there's going to be some times where you get sucked in too far and that you can't make that play. He did a great job being disciplined and staying gap sound and be able to make that play, man. So, I think the starting linebackers did well. I thought Prince flashed, but still inconsistent. Linebacker unit, just in general, I thought had a good day of football. Really good play.
Yeah, I was very impressed with the linebacker play. And again, I mentioned this on the offensive side. I'm going to mention it on the defensive side. They're playing their best football going into one of the biggest games of the season. And they are going to need to play well against Clemson. I don't care which quarterback it is that plays for Clemson. That really honestly doesn't matter to me. I think that DJ Uiagalelei makes bad decisions, and you can force him into some bad decisions by putting pressure on him. If it's Cade Klubnik, he's a true freshman. Yes, he's a 5-star true freshman, but he's still a true freshman. You can confuse the crap out of him and make him make some bad decisions. So whoever the quarterback is for Clemson, if these linebackers are playing the way that they are, if they play the way they did the last 2 weeks, specifically yesterday, then they're going to make things difficult for the Clemson quarterback, whoever it is. So they need to continue that stretch. They have to keep going like this, man, because if they don't do that, then, it's going to be a different ball game. But I just feel like they're ascending at the right time.
Yep. Because Clemson's going to want to play a downhill style offensively, right? Like, you think about the Will Shipleys of the world, and they're not they have the Williams kid, the freshman receiver, the slot. That's a pretty good player, but like, there's still a lot of trees, right? Like, everything's kind of condensed. They want to run the football. So linebackers are going to be big against Clemson, and it's great. It's a great trend right now that Notre Dame's linebackers are playing their best football heading into a couple very important games at a team next week that wants to run the football. That's what Clemson wants to build butter their bread off of.
Absolutely. They want to just feed Shipley all day long. I mean, that's how they want to play, because they don't trust either quarterback to just sit back. I mean, they were very spoiled by having
Yes.
Trevor Lawrence. Let's
Oh,
be
yeah.
honest, and they don't have that right now. And maybe Cade Klubnik ends up being that kid at some point. He's not that kid now, and so
No.
they were spoiled, and they're going to have to lean on the run game. But that's all for next week. So secondary play, right? There was some glaring misses. Obviously, Ben Morrison got beat once or twice. I think some of that was scheme, but I think some of it was on him as well.
Sure.
Brandon Joseph, I mean, you mentioned it in your text to me. He played his best game of the year, no doubt about it, but I'll let you kind of walk through the secondary.
Yeah, it was a mixed bag as far as the pass coverage perspective. First half, I thought Notre Dame let their defensive backs be very aggressive, and I think that paid off in a lot of instances, right? Like Syracuse, Oronde Gadsden, the second, is a really talented wide receiver, but they don't have a ton of speed at wide receiver. They have some size. So I like the fact that Notre Dame came out in the first half and they said, we're going to press these guys. We're going to be physical with them. I thought that was a great idea. And I think that they really had a lot of good moments. There was obviously the first drive for Syracuse. Benjamin Morrison gets stemmed outside, and then he kind of gives up inside leverage, and it's a touchdown. And you're just kind of like, oh, come on, Ben. Like, you need to be more understanding of where your help is on that play. You don't have any, right? Like, you don't have any
exactly.
help. So you got to create help, force him to the sideline. He's a bigger wide receiver. Like, that's what you need to do, right? Yeah. So a mental mistake by a freshman corner, and then he gets caught being a little too handsy on the next drive. But then there's a play they try to hit him downfield where it should have been an offensive pass interference call, if we're being completely honest. And for the rest of the day, I thought Benjamin Morrison, he really reacted and he grew during that football game. There was a lot of iffy early. As a corner, you need to have a short memory, and I think he had a short memory in this football game. Yeah. He was up for the challenge throughout the majority of the football game after a rough start. Cam Hart, Vince, I mean, he missed the tackle on that first drive on that 3rd and 6 or whatever it was off of that motion. But I thought he played a fantastic football game from a coverage perspective, man. He was sticky. The team did not test him almost at all. When they did, he squatted on a route and almost intercepted the football. Probably should have had an interception.
Yes.
He played a really good football game. I thought for the majority, there were a couple bad coverage plays, but I thought Tariq Bracy did a tremendous job for the most part playing against Oronde Gadsden in the slot. And even though he's a 5'10 corner going against a 6'5 wide receiver, big discrepancy there, but I thought he held his own, did a really good job. And, the corners for Mahol, I thought played well. The second half, I thought it wasn't as much it wasn't as much a player problem as it was a scheme problem. I thought they got very conservative in the second half, played a lot of off coverage, played a lot more zone. Yeah. And it just wasn't what was helping you and making you successful was being aggressive. And they just turned it off in the second half for whatever reason. Yeah. So I don't hold that against the players as much. I think it's a bad decision from the coaching staff coming out of the break. But at the end of the day, it didn't hurt them in the long run. I think it just gave up some easy plays. When the Carlos Del Rio Wilson kid came in, I felt that he just had some easy windows. And, give that kid credit, though. He's got a strong arm and he was hitting some windows. But I think Notre Dame was making it easier on him than it should have been at that point.
Yes.
So that, corners up and down, safeties, you said it already. Brandon Joseph's best game by far. He had obviously the pick 6 to start the football game. He had the other interception in the end zone that was called, an offsides, which I still don't know where that offsides came from, but a great rangy play working from depth. Almost had another interception, got his hands on another football in this football game. So he forced a couple turnovers. He stuck Sean Tucker in the run game on a pretty important play in the second half as well. Best game Brandon Joseph has played as a part of the Notre Dame football team by and large.
Yes.
After him, though, I thought the safety position was very underwhelming. I did. I mean, I'll say it like this. Houston Griffith and Xavier Watts, I thought were fine. Didn't make a ton of plays, weren't out of position, but they were fine, right? You can always get better than what Xavier Watts can play a higher brand of football than what he showed. Houston Griffith can make more plays if he's being a little more advantageous and a little more aggressive. So I feel like it was just kind of nonchalant. But I mean, honestly, and I don't want to throw shade at the kid because I think that he played well early on in the season, but I thought DJ Brown was the weak link of the defense in this football game. I really did, man. Like, you think about the missed tackle that they had on that 3rd and 8 on that inside run, which was Just so frustrating. They hit, I believe it was Rondé Gatson in the second half for a long play over the middle of the field where he was playing safety and it was almost a robber coverage. He jumped the route, mistimed his jump, missed the football, went for a big gain. I really thought DJ played a bad football game. I did. So for me, safety position-wise, Brandon Joseph is emerging as a star. He needs to continue that progression. But the other safety position, whoever it is, Xavier Watts, Houston Griffith, or DJ Brown, whoever that guy is, Ramon Henderson, if as he's kind of been a little banged up, whoever that guy is, they need a second and third safety, I think, to really take a step up. Because right now it's one good football player and a bunch of just average right now. They need a Batman to or Robin to Brandon Joseph's Batman right now. I don't think that there's a second safety playing at a high level. There's talent there, though, which gives me hope that it can emerge. But right now, Brandon Joseph's playing really good football, but I think the rest of the position just needs to play a little at a higher impact level than they are right now, especially in this game.
Yeah, I feel like the other safeties are just so up and down, right? It seems like it's a different guy every week who is the Robin to the Batman, but they're not even playing at Robin level. That's the problem. And so somebody needs to step up. Somebody needs to break away, whether it's Xavier Watts, whether it's Griffith, whether it's Brown, whoever. I don't care. Henderson, obviously, is the candidate as well. Somebody needs to step up and just take a stranglehold on that other safety position. It's just not happening because there's been times where it's like, oh man, Ramon Henderson's playing really well. Oh man, Xavier Watts is playing pretty well. Oh man, DJ Brown played, this pretty well. It's just not consistent and it's not at a high enough level overall. And so I agree with you 100%. Brandon Joseph hasn't played fantastic this year, but now he's starting to come on. And I think part of that was a little bit of injury. I hope that yesterday is an indication that he is who he is now going to be the rest of the year because they're going to need him.
Yep.
They're going to need him to force some turnovers and play well.
Well, and Vince, this is what he was at Northwestern. Like, this is why I was such a big fan of him, man. He was just a playmaker. I mean, he had 9 interceptions in 2 years for a reason, right? Like, he's got great instincts, good ball skills. It's been weird, to your point, right? He played really well against Ohio State, and then you just kind of didn't see him for a few weeks, right? Like, it was just kind of like he was just MIA.
Yes.
And with him missing that game with an injury, I'm going to assume deductive skills, right? Common sense. He's probably dealing with something. He probably is. But he looked healthy. And the one thing I will also say about Brandon Joseph is watching just the pregame warm-ups and watching these guys get ready, that's the guy that brings the juice. Like, he's dancing, getting everybody ready. Like, that's the guy. And they need him, especially moving forward here. And they got a big performance against him in Syracuse. There's something about him that's infectious. There's something about him that's confident. And it just exudes off of him. When he's playing well, I think the defense kind of follows suit. I think he's the leader that I think this defense needs. I really do.
Absolutely agree with that for sure. So, look, overall, I think there was a lot of good to take out of this game, even on the rewatch for me and for Ryan. I think there was a lot of good to take out of this game. Obviously, they did not play a perfect game by any stretch of the imagination, but they dominated Syracuse. They dominated them on both sides of the ball. And I would say overall, I would love it if they would just keep their foot on the gas a little bit longer defensively. I felt like they took their foot off the gas at halftime, and they made a backup quarterback look better than they needed to. If they would have kept the same game plan in the second half that they had in the first half, I don't think the kid looks as good as he did. I really don't. And, Brian was stressing how good this kid is, and he was a 5-star, and he was all these things. I get it, man. But the kid they had in first is pretty darn good, too. And Notre Dame made him a non-factor. He was 35 yards in the first half, right? So
5 of 12, 35 yards.
Yeah. Like, that was beautiful. This beautiful. They forced the action on the offense, which I thought was fantastic. So I just want to see that for a full game. I mean, just let them have it. They're a ranked team. You're not. You're the underdog. Just keep going. So they're going to have to play a full 60 minutes next Saturday. No doubt about that. I think they're all trending in the right direction. I think overall, if you get Drew Pine, just to be Drew Pine. If Drew Pine is Drew Pine, I think you got a great shot at shocking some people next week, but we will see.
Yeah, I mean, I would say this, Vince, kind of my last thought is you just played a Syracuse team that outplayed Clemson for the majority of the football game.
Should have won that game. Should have won that game.
And either way, you end up losing 6 points to the number 5 team in the country. Your only loss on the season. Notre Dame boat raced them, man. Like they won 41 to 24. And if you saw that game, man, it wasn't even close. Like Notre Dame did not play they did not play near to their potential, and they were the clear best team on that field. Like it was no question mark during that football game. So again, need to play cleaner, need to play better at certain spots, need to play more consistent, no doubt. But the fact that Notre Dame didn't even play their best game, in my opinion, and still put out that type of performance, it's been really easy to be pessimistic. But I think that you have to come out of this game feeling optimistic for what the coaching staff is doing, because they flipped the switch in this game. A week after playing UNLV poorly and 2 weeks after losing to Stanford, you come back and you beat the number 16 team on the road. I think it speaks volumes for what the coaches are trying to build. I give them credit for this one, obviously, as well.
Yep, no doubt about it. So good win for Notre Dame. Obviously, they're 2-1 against ranked teams this year. They're going to have, probably 2 more opportunities against ranked teams, one at home, one on the road. So, technically, you've got an opportunity to go 4-1 against ranked teams, and you still may not even be ranked at the end of the season. So I would say that is a pretty decent resume for Notre Dame moving forward. Obviously, the season has not gone the way we all wanted it to go. It has been disappointing in many ways, but I think we saw a glimmer, a light at the end of the tunnel yesterday. And if they can continue to build on that, I think this is going to be a real fun team to follow over the next few weeks. So that is going to do it for this edition of the Irish Breakdown podcast. Of course, everybody out there, make sure that you like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and share with your family and friends. We would all very much appreciate that. We do have a couple. I forgot about this. Oh boy, almost forgot about a couple super chats that we had. I apologize. So let's run into those here real quick. John A1 has one. He says, will Pine ever attack 10 to 20 yards outside the hashes?
I don't think with a high volume, John. He definitely needs to do it more. I think you saw a couple, especially Deion Colsey, where they're deep comebacks outside the numbers, which was nice to see. But that's just not Drew's game. He's not a big arm quarterback working outside the numbers at that type of depth. That's where arm strength really comes in to the fold, right? So and for me, Vince, I think he can do it more. I think you saw glimpses of it during this football game, but I don't think that's ever going to be a strength of Drew Pine. I don't.
Yeah, completely agree. He can make those throws, but that's not how you're going to build your game plan. That would be silly. JP, thanks for the super chat. Hey guys, good show. What are your grades for Tommy Rees and Drew Pine? Mine are Tommy Rees B and Drew Pine C-. If Clemson loads the box and Notre Dame can't run, can Drew Pine win the game?
Yeah. I guess for me, Vince, I actually liked a lot of what Tommy did. I thought first half Tommy was creative. He mixed and matched, a lot of different personnel groups. I thought was good. Yeah. Second half, he got into the monotonous kind of, just going to run the ball and get out of this football game type of thing. So it's not going to get an A for me, right? But I think a B is fair, JP. I would say I might even go B+. I think that he did a lot of good. This was one of the better games that he's called this year. I thought that he did a good job in this football game. So I give Tommy some credit. I think he did a nice job. So I give him a B or a B+. Drew Pine, I don't want to be mean, but D+, he wasn't good, man.
C-.
Yeah, C- is too high. It was, he won the football game, so I'm not going to give him an F, but he needs to be a lot better. It was not nearly good enough this game.
Yep, absolutely. It's a D or D+ for Drew Pine, and he would give himself probably that grade as well, if not worse. He knows what he did, and he knows what the film says, and he knows how he felt. There was a shot of him after the game where he's talking to the other team, and he's just running his hand through his hair like this. That's a sign of relief, because you didn't play well, and your team still dominated that other team. He knows how he played. So I think that's accurate. Tommy Rees is a B, but I think Drew Pine is probably lower than that, probably a D or D+.
A little lower, yeah.
Yeah, and then if Clemson loads the box and then Notre Dame can't run, first of all, they have to be able to run a little bit.
Yes.
You have to be able to run a little bit. Can Drew Pine win the game? I do not want to put the game on Drew Pine's shoulders. Can he make throws that he hasn't been making, like completing them, not one-hopping them or throwing them high? Yes, he can do that, but you cannot put the whole game on his shoulders. He needs play action. He needs the threat of a run game in order to be successful as a quarterback.
And I mean, that's most good quarterbacks, right? Like, I mean, there's
Absolutely.
very few quarterbacks that can just completely carry a football team and with no run game and not much help, right? Because that's just a very difficult task. I'll say this. If JP, like, my honest opinion is, if you are not be able to run the football and you are just a designated drop back team and that's all you have with Drew, you're not going to win the football game against Clemson. You're not. Like, you need to do the things around him and be able to make those plays, right? Like, he's a player that when things are going well, he can keep things on schedule. He can do well in his role, but he's not going to be a guy that you're just going to drop back 40 times in a football game and ask you to win the game. He could be a part of the victory, but he's not the only reason that you're going to win the game. He's
not driving the bus. Okay. He can be towards the front with the coaches, but he's not driving. So, but again, that doesn't make him a poor quarterback. He's not Trevor Lawrence. I mean,
It's like 98% of quarterbacks, Vince. Like, they need everything good around them to work. Like, there's very few Andrew Lucks, Trevor Lawrences of the world. That's why those guys go first overall, right? Like, it just doesn't happen a ton. It doesn't happen a ton.
Absolutely correct. We have one that's not a super chat, but I did want to answer this one real quick. It just caught my eye from Mark. He says, was it a risk to burn the 2nd of 4 redshirt games just to hand off? He's talking about Angeli.
I don't think so.
Name 2 more games that he's going to play in for sure. I mean, if Drew Pine gets hurt, right, and he's playing for the rest of the season, and it doesn't matter about a red shirt, right?
Right.
If he's going to be playing in a blowout situation, you're talking maybe Boston College, you're talking maybe Navy, and that's it. There's 4. So
yeah. I mean, and also, I mean, Vince, like, next year, we don't know what's going to happen, right? You have Tyler coming back from injury, hopefully healthy. You have Drew Pine possibly back for another year. You might have a transfer quarterback in. You might have another 2023 quarterback in. There's no guarantee that Steve Angeli's the second quarterback next year. So maybe his redshirt happens next year instead of this year. Like, there's a lot of things that could happen.
That's actually a really good point. I never even thought about that. That's a really good point. And then our final super chat is from Alan. Thank you very much. He says, what should happen to the Michigan State players?
That was a tough scene, man. That was a tough scene.
I need more information. I will say that. Yes. I hate to go off of Twitter.
Well, you're the disciplinarian at your school now, right? So this is your thing.
And I will say that the vast majority of my job is investigating, talking to witnesses, and looking at cameras and videos and social media, all of those things, right? If I have anything to do with this, I would be doing all of those things. I'm talking to witnesses. Right. I will tell you this, and it's something I was very disappointed in. One of the videos that I saw showed coaches or team personnel or whatever, guys that were not in uniform, running the opposite direction. Like, where are the adults in the room? I realize that all these football players are 18 and over and they're all technically adults, but where are the adults that are like trying to stop this from occurring? I have an issue with that as well. But at the same time, I don't have all the information. So I hesitate to speak out as to what a punishment should be, etc.
I agree with that standpoint, because I mean, it was weird, Vince. Like, the thing finally got broken up, or like, because it was one person versus like 15 dudes. Yes. It was so weird.
And there was nobody breaking it up. It was all like, all of a sudden they just let him go.
But the Michigan player then gets out of the crowd and then he starts going the other way. And then you see a couple coaches, and I'm like, were they just bystanders? Like, I don't understand what they were doing there, man. Like, I don't get it. But I agree with you. Like, there needs to be they need to evaluate the situation. They need to investigate the situation. I need to talk to all the grownups in the room. To your point, I need to talk to all the players in the room. And I mean, just a really bad look for Michigan State, though. Either way, I mean, because I don't know who started it. I don't know all that stuff. But all I know is you just got your butt kicked in the football game. And that's the fight you have after a game after you just lost by 22 points. Like, just a bad look. And it's an unfortunate situation. But to your point, I need to do a lot more homework on it. I need to talk to those gentlemen that were involved. Like, there's a lot of context to the situation.
Yep, no doubt about it. We got one final super chat, and I don't even know how to explain respond to this, because I don't know what happened. But Tyler Evans says Lane Kiffin taking shots after the game about Jimbo.
I didn't hear any. I didn't hear the press conference or anything, Tyler. So I don't know exactly what he said. I do know that Lane was he was a little angsty at this football game. Vince, I don't know if you saw that, but like there's a video circulating where he's like he's yelling at a Texas A&M player about like a faking an injury or something. I'm like, what the heck is happening, man? Like he's cursing. I'm like, oh, and we know Lane has his history as a little bit of a hothead and all that type of stuff. So another situation where, I mean, Tyler, I did not hear his comments. I don't know exactly what he said, but this is the thing with Lane, man, is Lane's gotten a lot better with this, but Lane's got that hot-headedness to him. He always has. He always has.
I have one message for Lane. You're 1 week too late, my friend. You should have taken care of business last week. Okay, you let me down. Congratulations on the win against A&M, but you let me down last week, man. Killing me.
He did.
Ladarius, his boys aren't going to let me down next week, so I hope that's the case. All right, so we got through all the super chats. So Ryan, thank you for joining me tonight. Really appreciate it. I love. We don't get to do shows that often together, so I enjoy doing this, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely, man.
All right, so that is going to do it. Remember to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share with your family and friends. Really appreciate everybody joining us on a Sunday night. We will be back tomorrow, 1 o'clock show, I believe. Yes, tomorrow, 1 o'clock?
Yes, 1 o'clock. Sorry.
Just making sure.
No doubt. Nope,
and then there will be no evening show because it's Halloween. And we all have youngins, and we will be doing Halloweenish things. And so there will be no evening show. There will be no IB Nation Sports Talk. But as a special treat for everybody out there, we are going to do a 3-way IB Nation Sports Talk on Tuesday night. It's going to be me, Sean, and Jesse, all three of us doing the show together on Tuesday night. And then, of course, the 1 o'clock show will also be there too. So thank you, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful Sunday. I hope you have a wonderful week, and happy Halloween to all of the ghouls and goblins out there. We will see you next time on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.